The council chamber floated in the void like a crystal crown, its translucent walls refracting the light of a nearby star into 1,000 shimmering colors. Inside, representatives from 64 species sat in tiered rows, their forms ranging from towering insectoids to floating gas clouds wrapped in containment fields. At the center of the chamber, Ambassador Marcus Chin stood alone on the human platform, his black uniform stark against the pastel hues of the room. Ambassador Chin, the High Arbiter, droned, its voice a harmonic blend of tones that made the air vibrate. The jellyfish-like creature pulsed with bioluminescent disdain. You have wasted this council's time with your grievances for the last time. The incident at Nevera Colony was investigated. Our conclusion stands. Marcus clenched his jaw. 2,000 civilians are dead, burned alive when the XA-Thran blockade cut off their supply lines. You call that an incident? A ripple of clicks and whistles swept through the chamber. Alien laughter. The XA-Thran delegate, a mantis-like being with obsidian eyes, tilted its head. Your species builds settlements in contested zones without proper defensive infrastructure. This is natural selection, Ambassador. Your people are welcome to learn from their mistakes, if they survive long enough. More laughter. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest, the kind of heat that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with ancestral memory. The rage of prey animals who learned to fight back. We followed every protocol, Marcus said, his voice shaking with controlled fury. We filed the settlement claim. We paid the fees. We registered with the defense network. And when we called for help, your fleets ignored us. The High Arbiter's luminescence dimmed. The XA-Thran are a founding member of this council. Their claim to the Nevera sector predates yours by several cycles. We will not risk interspecies conflict over a human outpost. 2,000 people, Marcus repeated. A regrettable but acceptable loss, the Arbiter said, and the way pronounced acceptable made Marcus's vision blur. He looked around the chamber. The Velker delegation, pale-skinned telepaths who claimed moral superiority, stared through him as if he were transparent. The CRYNN, massive bear-like traders, yawned openly. The robotic syntharks didn't even bother to activate their visual sensors. To them, humanity was background noise, entertaining when useful, expendable when not. Marcus thought of his daughter, stationed on one of Earth's orbital defense platforms. He thought of the miners on Luna, the farmers on Mars, the engineers building warp gates in the outer colonies. He thought of every human who had swallowed their pride, who had smiled to the insults, who had believed that patience and cooperation would eventually earn them respect. He thought of Nevera burning. Then we're done here, Marcus said quietly. The High Arbiter's glow brightened with something like amusement. Indeed, this council has more pressing matters. You are dismissed, Ambassador. Marcus didn't bow, didn't acknowledge the alien dignitaries. He simply turned and walked toward the exit, his boots clicking against the crystalline floor. Behind him, the chamber resumed its business, already forgetting him. But as the airlock sealed and Marcus stepped into the human transport shuttle, he pulled a small communicator from his jacket. His hands were steady now. Calm. He entered a single code, 6 digits that would travel faster than light, bouncing through relay stations until they reached Earth. The message was simple. Marigold Protocol, authorized. The shuttle pilot, a young woman with scars on her neck from a CRYNN labor camp, glanced back. Sir, did they? They refused, Marcus said. He stared out the viewport of the council chamber, that beautiful, arrogant monument to 1,000 civilizations who had never known true hardship. Get us home. The Admiral is waiting. 6 hours later, Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the war room aboard the UESS Indomitable, humanity's first dreadnought-class warship. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of Earth's 53 military vessels, a pitifully small fleet compared to thousands controlled by Council species. But size had never been humanity's advantage. Confirmation received from all colonial governors. Her EXO reported. The vote was unanimous. Elena nodded. She was 58, gray-haired, and her face bore the deep lines of someone who had seen too much. She had commanded relief operations during the Keldon Plague. She had negotiated hostage releases with pirate cartels. She had buried friends killed by accidents that the Council never bothered investigating. She had been patient. They all had. "Open a channel," she said. "All human vessels. All colonies. Priority Alpha." The room fell silent. Every screen in human space, from Earth to the farthest mining outpost, flickered to life. Families paused at dinner tables. Workers stopped mid-shift. Children looked up from their tablets. Elena stared into the camera, and her eyes were cold fire. "This is Admiral Elena Vasquez, commanding the United Earth Fleet. For 300 years, we have tried to find our place among the stars. We have traded, negotiated, and bled to earn respect from species who view us as primitives. We have swallowed insults. We have accepted injustice. We have watched our people die while the Galactic Council debates whether we deserve to exist." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Today, that ends. The Council has declared human lives acceptable losses. So we will show them what happens when you push a Deathworld species too far. Effective immediately, the United Earth Fleet is withdrawing from all Council treaties. All human assets are to be fortified. All trade agreements are void." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. "We are going to war." The XA-Thren High Command received the Human Declaration 3 hours after Admiral Vasquez's broadcast. Fleet Commander Zirithka watched the recording with his secondary eyes, while his primary eyes scanned tactical reports. When the transmission ended, he clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his kind. "Delusional primates," he said, his translator rendering the chittering into galactic standard. "How many ships do they possess?" 50? 60. 53 confirmed military vessels. Commander, his intelligence officer replied. "Mostly frigates and destroyers. 1 dreadnought-class ship, though our analysts believe it's inferior to our cruiser design." Zirithka turned to face the viewport. Where the XA-Thren Third Fleet hung in formation, 300 warships arrayed like gleaming daggers. "And they think they can challenge the Council? Send a message to the High Arbiter. Inform them that the XA-Thren will handle this irritation personally. We will crush the human fleet and remind the galaxy why Deathworlders belong in chains, not Council chambers." "Commander," the intelligence officer hesitated. "There is something unusual. Human ships are moving in unexpected patterns. They've abandoned their predictable trade routes and defensive positions. Fear," Zirithka said dismissively. "They scatter like insects. Begin preparations. We strike their Mars colony in 48 hours. A clean surgical strike will break their spirit." But the intelligence officer's antennae twitched with unease. "Sir, they're not scattering. They're consolidating. And they're moving toward the Callus Nebula." Zirithka paused. The Callus Nebula was a sensor dead zone, a swirling mass of ionized gas that scrambled communications and made long-range detection impossible. Why would the humans retreat into a tactical black hole? Irrelevant, he decided. If they want to hide, let them. We'll flush them out after we destroy their colony. Aboard the Indomitable, Elena studied the three-dimensional map of the Sol system with fierce concentration. Red markers indicated human positions. Blue markers showed Council fleet movements. And yellow markers, those were the surprises. "Status on the Cerberus stations?" she asked. Captain James Rodriguez, her tactical officer, pulled up a secondary display. All 12 stations are online and camouflaged. The Council still thinks they're asteroid mining platforms. Elena allowed herself a thin smile. For 30 years, humanity had been building weapons in secret. Not because they wanted war, but because they understood a fundamental truth that the Council had forgotten. Prey animals that survive don't do so by trusting predators. The Cerberus stations looked like standard mining facilities, complete with or processing equipment and civilian transponders. But each one concealed a weapon humanity had reverse engineered from salvaged Council technology and improved with human desperation. Gravitational pulse cannons capable of tearing ships apart at the molecular level. And the Valkyrie bombers? Hidden in the Kuiper Belt. 200 units, fully armed with kinetic penetrators. "The Council thinks we're primitives," Elena said softly. "They think we rely on crude ballistic weapons. They have no idea we've been watching, learning, and building. Rodriguez leaned forward. Admiral, the Exathren Third Fleet is moving toward Mars. 300 ships. If they hit the colony. They won't, Elena interrupted, because they're not going to Mars. They're coming to us. She tapped the control, and the map shifted to show the Callus Nebula. We've leaked intelligence suggesting our entire fleet is hiding here. The Exathren are arrogant. They'll want to crush us in one decisive battle, to make an example. So they'll follow us into the nebula. Where sensors don't work, Rodriguez realized. Where sensors don't work, Elena confirmed. And where we spent the last 6 months mapping every gravitational eddy and radiation pocket. We'll see them coming. They'll be blind. Zirith Ka's prediction proved correct. 2 days later, long-range sensors detected the human fleet entering the Callus Nebula. The Exathren commander ordered his fleet to pursue, ignoring the protests of his more cautious officers. They think the nebula will protect them, he announced to his bridge crew, but we outnumber them 6-1. Even blind, we will overwhelm them through sheer firepower. All ships, combat formation. We end this today. The Third Fleet entered the nebula like a spear thrust into cotton. Immediately, their sensors went dark. Communication became sporadic. Ships maintained formation through short-range transponders and visual confirmation, their hulls illuminated by the eerie purple glow of ionized gas. "Contact!" a sensor technician shouted. Multiple human signatures, bearing 270, range unknown. All ships, advance and engage. Zirith Ka ordered. The Exathren fleet surged forward, weapons charging. Energy cannons hummed to life. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths. And then the nebula exploded, not with fire, but with electromagnetic pulses that cascaded through the gas like lightning through a storm. The pulses were carefully calibrated. Humanity had done its homework. They disrupted Exathren shield generators without damaging the ships themselves. For exactly 7 seconds, the entire Third Fleet was defenseless. 7 seconds was all humanity needed. The human ships materialized from the nebula's depths, not in a scattered formation, but in a perfectly coordinated strike pattern. They had been waiting in predetermined positions, using the nebula's natural radiation to mask their heat signatures. Now they attacked with surgical precision. Kinetic penetrators, solid tungsten rods accelerated to relativistic speeds, tore through Exathren hulls like bullets through paper. The alien superior armor meant nothing when the impact force exceeded their structural tolerances. Ships didn't explode. They simply came apart, shredded into spiraling debris. Evasive maneuvers. Zirith Ka screamed, but his fleet was too tightly packed. Ships collided as they tried to scatter. The nebula that was supposed to trap the humans had become a killing field for the Exathren. A human destroyer, the Retribution, roared past Zirith Ka's flagship at point-blank range, its railguns firing in a continuous stream. The rounds punched through the cruiser's engine section, and Zirith Ka felt the deck lurch beneath his feet. "Return fire!" he shrieked, but his weapons officer was already dead, impaled by a support beam torn loose from the ceiling. Through the viewport, Zirith Ka watched his fleet die. Human ships moved like wolves, appearing from the purple haze, striking, then vanishing before retaliation was possible. They didn't fight with honor or formation. They fought like survivors, vicious, opportunistic, and utterly without mercy. The Indomitable emerged from the nebula's heart, its massive form dwarfing the smaller human vessels. Elena stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. 300 Exathren ships had entered the nebula. Less than 50 would leave. "Message incoming," her communications officer announced. "Audio only. It's the Exathren commander." "Put it through." Zirith Ka's voice was broken, desperate. "We surrender. Please, we surrender." Elena stared at the speaker for a long moment. She thought of Nevera, of the 2,000 people who had begged for mercy that never came, of 3 centuries of humiliation. "You declared us acceptable losses," she said quietly. "Now you know how that feels." She closed the channel and gave the order her crew had been waiting for. "Finish them. The destruction of the Exathren Third Fleet sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council that no amount of sensor jamming could contain. Within hours, refugee ships limped out of Callus Nebula, broadcasting desperate distress signals. The survivors spoke of ambush, of human ships that moved like ghosts, of weapons that tore through shields as if they were illusions. The High Arbiter convened an emergency session. The council chamber, usually filled with casual arrogance, now buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives huddled in clusters, their various forms of communication creating a discordant symphony of clicks, whistles, and telepathic static. Order! The Arbiter's voice boomed, its bioluminescence flashing angry crimson. We must address this crisis with unity and... Unity? The Velker Prime speaker rose, her pale skin flushed with emotion. The humans just destroyed an entire fleet. 300 ships. Gone. And you want to discuss unity? They are primitives with stolen technology, a CRYNN representative growled. We crush them. Send 10 fleets. 20. We have thousands of ships. And they knew exactly where the third fleet would be. A synth arch unit interjected, its mechanical voice devoid of emotion but heavy with implication. They predicted Exathren tactics with perfect accuracy. Either they possess intelligence assets we don't know about, or they understand warfare better than we assumed. The chamber erupted in argument. Some call for immediate retaliation. Others urge caution. A few, very quietly, suggest a negotiation. But the Arbiter silenced them all with a pulse of light, so bright it hurt to look at. The humans have declared war on the Galactic Council, it said. This cannot stand, but we will not be reckless. We will assemble a coalition fleet, 2,500 ships from multiple species. We will coordinate our attack, and we will end this human rebellion before it spreads. Spreads? The Velker Prime speaker asked. The Arbiter's glow dimmed. There are reports, minor species, on the Council's periphery. Some are asking questions about human tactics, about why we tolerate certain injustices. We must demonstrate strength now, or risk encouraging others to follow the human example. In the silence that followed, nobody noticed a small maintenance drone recording everything from a ventilation shaft. Nobody saw it transmit encrypted data to a nearby relay station. And nobody suspected that humanity had infiltrated council systems years ago, planting digital seeds that now bore fruit. 2 weeks after the Callus Nebula massacre, Admiral Vasquez stood before a gathering that would have been impossible a month earlier. The Hollow Conference connected 17 non-council species, civilizations that existed on the galaxy's margins, too weak to join the council, too proud to submit completely. Representatives from the Helkin Collective, the Drayan tribes, the free miners of Oberon Station, all watch Elena with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Thank you for accepting this invitation. Elena began. I know many of you are taking a risk just by listening. The Council considers unauthorized communication between minor species to be seditious activity. A Helkin delegate, her scales iridescent blue, spoke first. Admiral, we've heard the reports. You destroyed a Exathren fleet, but the Council has 20,000 ships. What can you possibly offer us except a path to mutual extinction? Elena nodded. A fair question. Let me answer it with one of my own. How many of you have lost people to council accidents? Trade disputes that ended in blockades? Colonies wiped out by natural disasters that coincidentally occurred after you refused unfavorable contracts? The silence was answer enough. The council operates on a simple principle, Elena continued. They are strong. We are weak. Therefore, we exist at their pleasure. They take what they want, ignore what we need, and punish anyone who objects. They call it civilization. I call it tyranny with better public relations. Pretty words, a Drayan chief rumbled, is for arms crossed. But words don't stop battle fleets. No, Elena agreed, but information does. Strategy does. Unity does. The Council thinks they're fighting one primitive species. They're wrong. They're about to fight an idea. The idea that survival matters more than tradition, that justice matters more than hierarchy, that the strong don't have an inherent right to crush the weak. She brought up tactical displays showing human ship movements. We've been studying Council warfare for 3 centuries. We know their formations, their response times, their logistical chains. We know which species are loyal, which are opportunistic, and which are secretly afraid. We know where their supply depots are, where their communication relays exist, and exactly how long it takes them to coordinate a multi-species response. You're saying you can win? The Helkin delegate asked skeptically. No, Elena said bluntly. I'm saying we can make them bleed. Make them question whether controlling us is worth the cost. And while they're busy with us, you can do what we cannot. You can spread the word. Tell other species what's happening. Show them that resistance is possible. A voice crackled over the comm, heavily encrypted. Elena didn't recognize the species, but the translator rendered it clearly. What do you want from us, Admiral? Nothing you can't freely give, Elena said. Share intelligence. Coordinate trade routes that bypass Council checkpoints. When the Council fleet comes for us, and they will, simply don't help them. Don't provide fuel. Don't offer repair facilities. Don't volunteer information. Let them discover that controlling the galaxy is easier than maintaining that control. And if they punish us for this neutrality, Elena's eyes hardened. Then you'll know what side you're really on. The Council promises protection in exchange for obedience. We're offering something different, dignity in exchange for courage. The choice is yours. The conference ended without commitments, but Elena saw something in their expressions that gave her hope. Fear, yes, but also anger. And anger, properly directed, was a weapon no dreadnought could match. 3 days later, the Council's coalition fleet assembled at the tertiary staging point. 2,500 ships from 19 species, the largest military force gathered in a century. Fleet Admiral Kreneth, a Velker chosen for his reputation of ruthless efficiency, stood on the bridge of the flagship Harmonious Unity and felt satisfaction radiate through his telepathic field. This force could conquer entire star systems, his second-in-command observed. Using it against one species seems excessive. Excessive? Kreneth's mental voice was ice. We are making an example. Every species in the galaxy will see what happens when you challenge Council authority. The humans will be erased, and their homeworld will become a monument to the price of rebellion. Sir, intelligence reports indicate human ships are scattered across multiple systems. Should we divide our forces? No, Kreneth said firmly. The humans want us to fragment our fleet, to fight on multiple fronts. We will not accommodate them. We strike Earth directly. Once their homeworld falls, their colonies will surrender immediately. It's basic psychology. Cut off the head and the body dies. It was sound strategy based on centuries of Council military doctrine. It had worked against Athorian rebellion, the Nexus uprising, and a dozen other conflicts. Kreneth had no reason to believe it would fail now. He didn't know that human psychology was different, that humans, when cornered, didn't surrender. They got creative. The coalition fleet entered the Sol system in a formation that blotted out stars. They expected orbital defenses, minefields, desperate last stands. What they found was an empty void. No fleet, no stations. Even Earth's orbital installations appeared dormant, their lights dark, their weapons cold. Where are they? Kreneth demanded, his telepathic field rippling with confusion. Unknown, Admiral. Sensors detect minimal life signs on Earth itself. It's as if they've evacuated. The trap sprung with perfect timing. The Cerberus stations, hidden among the asteroid belt for 3 decades, activated simultaneously. 12 gravitational pulse cannons fired in coordinated sequence, creating a cascade effect that ripped through the coalition's formation like a chainsaw through silk. Ships didn't just break apart. They imploded, crushed by localized gravity wells that exceeded black hole intensities for microseconds. 200 ships died in the first volley. Then the Valkyrie bombers emerged from the Kuiper Belt, having coasted toward the fleet on ballistic trajectories that made them nearly invisible. 200 sleek craft unleashed kinetic penetrators at relativistic speeds, each impact releasing energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. And finally, the human fleet materialized from behind Luna, where they'd been hiding in the moon's sensor shadow. 53 ships against 2,300. Impossible odds. But the humans weren't fighting alone anymore. From the outer system, unregistered vessels appeared, Helkin raiders, Drea militia, free minor defense craft. Not many, perhaps 300 ships total. But they struck at the coalition's flanks, creating chaos, forcing the Council fleet to split its attention. Kreneth watched his perfect formation dissolve into pandemonium and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. All ships, reform, and the Indomitable emerged from Luna's shadow, its main cannon glowing with barely contained power. It fired once, a lance of focused energy that punched through the harmonious Unity's shields and carved a molten canyon through its hull. Kreneth's last thought was that he had underestimated Deathworlders. It was a fatal mistake. The Battle of Sol lasted 18 hours and redefined galactic warfare. When the Coalition fleet finally retreated, they left behind 900 destroyed vessels and a shattered belief in Council invincibility. The survivors limped back to their territories, broadcasting confused and contradictory reports about impossible human tactics, about weapons that shouldn't exist, about coordinated attacks from species that weren't supposed to communicate with each other. On Earth, Elena Vasquez stood in the ruins of Buenos Aires Defense Command, watching smoke rise from impacts that had broken through their defenses. The humans had won, but victory tasted like ash. 30,000 civilians dead from orbital bombardment. Infrastructure across 3 continents damaged. Luna colony operating on emergency power. Mars reporting food shortages. "We can't sustain another battle like that," Captain Rodriguez said quietly, joining her at the observation window. His left arm was in a sling, broken when a bulkhead collapsed during the Indomitable's final engagement. "I know," Elena said. "We hurt them badly, but they still have 18,000 ships. We have 41. She lost 12 vessels in the battle, each one taking hundreds of crew with it. The names haunted her: Retribution, Damascus, New Hope, Perseverance. Ships and people she'd known personally. "The Coalition is fragmenting," Rodriguez offered. "Intelligence reports that 7 Council species are refusing to commit additional forces. The CRYNN are demanding the Council reimburse their losses. The Syntharks are questioning the strategic value of continued conflict." Elena allowed herself a bitter smile. "We're making them do math. That's something. But the core Council species, the Velker, Exathren, their closest allies, they won't stop. This has become about pride now. They can't afford to let Deathworlders win." A communication alert chimed. Rodriguez checked his tablet, and his expression shifted. "Admiral, you need to see this. It's being broadcast across 70% of the galaxy's communication networks. Someone hacked the Council's primary relay system." Elena pulled up the transmission on her personal display. What she saw made her breath catch. It was Ambassador Marcus Chun, standing in what appeared to be a Council security facility. Behind him, holographic displays showed classified documents, files marked with Council seals, encrypted correspondence, financial records. Marcus looked exhausted but defiant as he spoke directly to the camera. "My name is Marcus Chun, former human ambassador to the Galactic Council. What you're seeing behind me are documents I spent 5 years collecting. Evidence that the Council has known about and deliberately ignored 43 genocides, 1,700 cases of slavery, and systematic exploitation of 600 minor species over the past 2 centuries. The display shifted, showing a communication between Velker leadership and Exathren command discussing the acceptable parameters of civilian casualties during trade disputes. Another showed CRYNN corporations bribing Council officials to ignore labor violations. A third revealed that the Council had deliberately withheld medical technology from plague-stricken worlds to maintain political leverage. "The Council presents itself as a force for civilization and order," Marcus continued. "But these documents prove what many of us have known for generations. They maintain control through selective justice. They prosecute crimes committed by the weak and ignore crimes committed by the strong. They preach unity while practicing exploitation." He leaned closer to the camera, his voice dropping to something fierce and intimate. "To every species watching this, ask yourself, when did the Council last help you without demanding something in return? When did they defend you without calculating the political cost? When did they treat you like equals instead of assets? The transmission cut to battle footage from Seoul, not propaganda but raw combat recordings. Council ships firing on civilian structures. Ex-Athren commanders ordering the destruction of hospital ships. Velker telepaths attempting to break the minds of captured human officers. Humanity declared war. Because we had no choice, Marcus said as the footage played. Because after 3 centuries of trying to belong, we finally understood that the Council doesn't want members. It wants subjects. And we would rather die free than live on our knees. The transmission ended, but Elena knew its impact would ripple for months. Marcus had essentially sacrificed himself. The Council would declare him a terrorist, a criminal, a traitor to galactic peace. But he'd also planted seeds of doubt in a billion minds. Where is he? Elena asked Rodriguez. Unknown. The transmission bounced through 40 relay stations. He could be anywhere, but Admiral Rodriguez hesitated. There are reports coming in. Protests on Helkin Prime. Work stoppages at Dreyan mining facilities. A CRYNN labor union is demanding Council investigation into the files Marcus released. It's spreading. Elena nodded slowly. The war wasn't just military anymore. It had become ideological, and ideas were harder to kill than ships. 6,000 light-years away, in a medical facility on the neutral world of Themis Station, Marcus Chin watched his broadcast on a small screen while a doctor, a kindly Helkin named Risara, checked his vital signs. You've just made yourself the most wanted being in the galaxy, Risara said, her scales shifting to worry purple. The Council will hunt you forever. I know, Marcus said. He felt strangely calm. For 5 years, he played the patient diplomat, smiling through insults while secretly copying files, bribing technicians, exploiting security gaps. He'd become a spy because someone had to bear witness. Someone had to collect the evidence that the Council worked so hard to bury. Was it worth it? Risara asked. Marcus thought of Nevera, of the 2,000 people who died, believing the Council would protect them. He thought of every human who'd been beaten, exploited, or killed because they came from a death world. And he thought of all the non-human species suffering the same fate, their stories untold, their deaths unmourned. Ask me in a year, he said, if we're still alive, if other species are joining the resistance, if the Council is actually being held accountable, then yes, it will have been worth it. Risara's scales shifted to amber, respect mixed with sadness. For what it's worth, Ambassador, I believe you. Many of us do. We've known about the Council's crimes for generations. We just never thought anyone would be brave enough to speak openly. Or crazy enough, Marcus said with tired smile. Perhaps courage and madness are closer than we think. She handed him a data chip. There's a ship waiting in docking bay 17. The captain is human, but the crew is mixed, Helkin, Dreyan, even a few former Council species who deserted. They call themselves the Free Fleet. They'll keep you safe while you continue your work. Continue? Risara's scales flashed silver. Amusement. Ambassador, you released 43 genocides worth of documentation. Do you really think you've scratched the surface? The Council has been operating for 800 years. There are deeper secrets, darker crimes, and someone needs to bring them to light. Marcus took the chip, feeling its weight as if it contained the future. Maybe it did. Thank you, Risara. When this is over, if you survive, come back and tell me the ending, she interrupted gently. I'd like to know how this story concludes. The Council chamber had never been quieter. The High Arbiter pulsed with colors nobody had seen before. Deep crimson mixed with sickly yellow, a chromatic expression of rage and fear. Around it, representatives from the core Council species sat in stunned silence as they reviewed the leaked documents. This is fabricated, a Velker representative finally said, but her mental voice lacked conviction. Human propaganda, designed to turn the galaxy against us. Fabricated. A CRYNN elder stood, his massive frame shaking with fury. These financial records show my own trading house engaged in illegal labor practices. If this is fabrication, it's impossibly detailed fabrication. The Syntharks have verified the encryption signatures, a mechanical voice announced. These documents are authentic council records. The question is not their validity. The question is containment. The arbiter's glow intensified. We suppress this information. We declare it classified security material. We prosecute anyone who distributes it. Suppress it. A minor species representative, a Tholine who rarely spoke, rose from its seat. The transmission reached 70% of the galaxy. Billions have seen it. You can't suppress what everyone already knows. Then we discredit it. The arbiter snapped. We launch a counterinformation campaign. We've lost the narrative. The synth arch interrupted with mechanical finality. Our calculations indicate a 47% probability of widespread civil unrest within 6 months. Minor species are already organizing. Labor strikes have begun on 18 worlds. 3 council members have received assassination threats from their own populations. We are facing systemic instability. The arbiter dimmed, then flared bright white, a desperate gambit. Then we end the war. Immediately, we offer the humans terms. Generous terms. We make them look like aggressors if they refuse. And if they accept, the Velker asked. Then we bought time, the arbiter said. Time to rebuild our reputation. Time to root out these resistance cells. Time to remind the galaxy why they need the council. A vote was called. It passed with 73% approval. The council would offer humanity peace. They didn't realize that humanity had never wanted peace. Humanity wanted justice, and those two things were not the same. The peace delegation arrived at neutral Themis Station 3 weeks after Marcus Chen's broadcast. 7 council representatives, each from a different species, emerged from a luxurious diplomatic transport that gleamed like a jewel against the station's utilitarian hull. They wore ceremonial robes and carried gifts, traditional offerings meant to demonstrate goodwill and superiority in equal measure. Admiral Elena Vasquez met them in Conference Room 7, a stark chamber with gray walls and functional furniture. She wore her military uniform, perfectly pressed but bearing the scorch marks from the Battle of Seoul. She brought no gifts. Only Captain Rodriguez and 2 security officers flanked her. The contrast was intentional. The Velker delegation leader, a male named Carthan whose silver robes cost more than a human frigate, smiled with practiced diplomacy. Admiral Vasquez, we are honored to meet with you under more pleasant circumstances. The Council extends its deepest regrets for the misunderstandings that led to recent conflicts. Elena didn't sit. Misunderstandings. That's an interesting way to describe 900 of your ships attacking Earth. Carthan's smile tightened. A regrettable overreaction to the destruction of the Exathren Third Fleet. But we are here to move beyond past grievances. The Council is prepared to offer humanity full membership, not as a provisional species, but as voting members with representation equal to founding civilizations. Rodriguez inhaled sharply. It was an unprecedented offer. Full Council membership would give humanity access to advanced technology, trade networks, and political power they'd spent 3 centuries being denied. Elena's expression didn't change. And in exchange, complete cessation of hostilities, a CRYNN representative rumbled. Withdrawal of all human military forces to Sol System. Extradition of Ambassador Chun to face charges of espionage and data theft. And a formal apology for active aggression against Council vessels. You want us to surrender and hand over the man who exposed your crimes, Elena said flatly. We want peace, Carthan corrected smoothly. The documents Ambassador Chun released have caused complications. But the Council is prepared to address legitimate concerns through proper channels. We will establish a reform commission. We will investigate the allegations. Justice will be served, but through lawful means, not vigilante terrorism. Elena walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars. Themis Station orbited a binary star system, and the double shadows it cast seemed fitting for this conversation. Everything had at least 2 meanings. You're offering us everything we asked for 300 years ago, she said quietly. Membership, equality, justice through proper channels. It's exactly what humanity wanted when we first reached the stars. Then we have an agreement? Carthan's mental voice carried hope and calculation. Elena turned back to face them. No, The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. No. The CRYNN representative's fur bristled. You reject full council membership? After everything you fought for? We fought because you wouldn't give us membership when we asked peacefully, Elena said. Now you offer it because we hurt you, because we made the galaxy watch you bleed. That's not justice, Ambassador. That's extortion in reverse. Admiral, be reasonable, Carthan urged, and now his telepathic field radiated genuine concern. Your fleet is exhausted. Your worlds are damaged. The Council still possesses overwhelming military superiority. This peace offer is generous considering your strategic position. Strategic position, Elena repeated, and something in her voice made Rodriguez tense. Let me tell you about our strategic position. Right now, 17 minor species have formed a communication network that bypasses Council controls. Labor strikes are spreading across 40 systems. 3 of your own member species are facing internal revolts. Marcus Chen's broadcast has been viewed 2 billion times, and counter-broadcasts claiming it's fabricated have been viewed 30 million times. You're not offering us peace because you're generous. You're offering peace because you're terrified. Carthan's silver robe shimmered as his body language shifted, the Velcro equivalent of dropping pretense. What do you want, Admiral? Real accountability, Elena said. Not a reform commission that will deliberate for decades while people continue to suffer. We want the Council dissolved and rebuilt from scratch, with equal representation for all species. We want reparations paid to every civilization you've exploited. We want the officials responsible for the genocides Marcus exposed prosecuted in open courts. And we want to guarantee that never again will strength be the only currency that matters in this galaxy. The CRYNN representative laughed, a deep rumbling sound. You're demanding we destroy ourselves. That's not negotiation, it's fantasy. Then we have nothing to discuss. Elena moved toward the door. Wait, Carthan said urgently. You cannot win this war, Admiral. Even if you destroy another fleet, we have thousands more ships. We will blockade Earth. We will starve your colonies. We will erase your species from existence. Elena paused at the threshold. You could do that. It would be expensive, bloody, and take years. And while you're busy with us, how many other species will rise up? How many of your member civilizations will fracture from internal pressure? How long before the Council isn't fighting one rebellion but 40? You're bluffing, the CRYNN said. Minor species lack the courage to fight. They lack the example, Elena corrected. We've given them that. We've shown them that Deathworlders can make you bleed, that your ships can be destroyed, that your perfect formations can be shattered, that your authority can be questioned. You can kill us, Ambassador, but you can't unkill the idea we planted. Carthan's telepathic field collapsed into something raw and desperate. What you're describing is chaos. Galactic order will collapse. Thousands of species will wage war on each other without council structure to maintain peace. Maybe, Elena acknowledged, or maybe something better will emerge. Something built on cooperation instead of domination. Something where a species from a death world doesn't have to watch their people burn before anyone takes them seriously. She walked out, Rodriguez and security officers following. The council delegation sat in stunned silence, surrounded by their expensive gifts that nobody wanted. 6 months later, the galactic landscape had transformed beyond recognition. The council still existed, but its authority had crumbled like a sandcastle in a storm. 18 species had formally withdrawn membership. 42 others operated in a state of selective compliance, following council directives only when convenient. The military apparatus that once commanded 20,000 ships had fragmented into regional defense packs and species-specific fleets. Marcus Chen's revelations had sparked 12 formal independence movements and countless informal resistance cells. The council's desperate attempt at military suppression had failed. Not because they lacked ships, but because their crews increasingly refused orders. When the Third Reformation Fleet was ordered to bombard a Helkin colony for harboring human sympathizers, 70% of its officers resigned. The rest defected outright. Humanity's role in the transformation was both central and peripheral. The human fleet, now numbering 68 ships after captured vessels were repaired and recommissioned, had fought 11 more engagements. They won 6 outright, fought 4 to stalemates, and lost 1 badly. But winning wasn't the point. Surviving was. Every battle humanity fought was broadcast across the galaxy. Every human casualty had a name and stories shared on underground networks. Every tactical victory was analyzed and disseminated to other resistance groups. Humanity had become the galaxy's teachers in a subject nobody wanted to learn: how to fight when you're outmatched. On Earth, Elena Vasquez stood in the rebuilt Buenos Aires Defense Command, watching diplomatic feeds from 43 worlds. Representatives from minor species were drafting a new framework for galactic governance, one based on consensus rather than hierarchy, on mutual aid rather than enforced tribute. They're calling it the Commonwealth Accord, Rodriguez reported, reading from his tablet. No member species has authority over another. Decisions require 70% approval from all signatories. Military action requires 95% consensus. It'll never work, Elena said, but she smiled as she said it. Too idealistic. Too many species with conflicting interests. Probably, Rodriguez agreed, but it's better than what we had. A priority communication chimed. Elena accepted it, and Marcus Chen's face appeared on the screen. He looked older, whether by months of living in hiding, but his eyes burned with the same fierce determination. "Admiral," he said, "I'm sending you the location of something I found. Council files buried so deep, I almost missed them. There's a species called the Carith, extinct for 300 years, according to official records. Except they're not extinct. The Council wiped them out deliberately and covered it up. Witnesses, records, everything. It's genocide documented in meticulous detail." Elena felt cold settle in her chest. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the Carith had a homeworld," Marcus said quietly, "and that planet is now a Velker colony. The Council didn't just commit genocide. They profited from it. And if we can prove that, if we can show that the core Council species built their power on literal extinction events, the Commonwealth will have the moral authority to demand complete Council dissolution," Elena finished. "And more," Marcus said. "Trials. Real ones. Not symbolic gestures, but actual justice for centuries of crimes." He paused. "But Elena, this is evidence that could bring down civilizations. If we release it, the resulting chaos could kill billions. Species that depend on Council infrastructure will suffer. Trade networks will collapse. Old ethnic conflicts will reignite without Council peacekeepers to suppress them." Elena stared at the screen, feeling the weight of the decision. All her life, she'd fought for justice. But justice at what cost? How many innocent lives could she risk for abstract principles? "Send me everything," she said finally. "Elena, the Council made a choice 300 years ago," she interrupted. "They decided that order mattered more than justice, that stability justified oppression, that their convenience was worth our suffering. I won't make the same choice. If the galaxy burns, let it burn clean. Something better will grow from the ashes." Marcus nodded slowly. "The files are encrypted. Password is Nevera." The transmission ended. Elena stood alone in the command center, watching the feeds from 43 worlds trying to build something new. She thought of the 2,000 dead from Nevera colony, of the 30,000 killed defending Earth, of every human who died believing their sacrifice meant something. Outside the viewport, a human transport lifted toward orbit, carrying the first diplomatic delegation to the Commonwealth Accord signing ceremony. Aboard that ship were not just humans, but Helkin Draen, former CRYNN dissidents, even 3 Velker who'd abandoned their species' supremacist ideology. Deathworlders and dreamers, flying together toward an uncertain future. Elena pulled up Marcus's files and began to read. The galaxy had wanted order. Humanity had given it chaos. Now came the hardest part, building something that would endure. But if there was one thing Deathworlders understood, it was survival. And sometimes, survival meant tearing everything down to build it right the first time. The war wasn't over. It had simply evolved into something the Council never anticipated. A revolution that wasn't about conquest, but about dignity. And that, Elena thought, was a war worth fighting until the stars went dark.